You're on the train on your way to whom, and the situation is really sexual, and it's not that humorous though. There isn't any sex on the train because Diane Lane showed up on the train at 14. At 18, she was on the cover of Time magazine, had an angelic face and was a millionaire. She was a young idol who was sought after by everyone. Hollywood, but the more she traveled, the she grew quieter, and it wasn't until. At the age of 59, Diane eventually acknowledged having relationships, with both Christopher Atkins and Timothy Hutton, long suspected but never confirmed. Two co-stars verified as a young celebrity in a hint of romance to the eerily dramatic moment in Unfaithful that audiences consistently thought the role was genuine. Diane Lane has engaged in dozens of sexual parts that were emotionally complex endured, to a contentious arrest for failed marriages and innumerable rumors that never addressed. But behind those grieving eyes, who is Diane Lane in reality? The tale that has never been told in its entirety, and one you'll want to avoid. On January 22nd, Miss Diane Lane was born. Her mother, Colleen, was born in New York City in 1965. Colleen is another name for Lee Farrington. Price worked as a model and performer. In nightclubs, she was formerly Playboy Miss. Her father was centerfolded in October 1957, Burton Eugene Lane. His father was an actor, Manhattan coach who oversaw a theater John Cassavetes' workshop, served ASA cab driver before becoming a teacher, City College of New York's Humanities Department. Diane was only 13 days old when her mother later moved when her parents divorced. Nevertheless, and went to Mexico and filed for divorce. She had custody of Diane until she was 6 years old. She gave her to her father after Diane moved to Georgia after that, living in New York with her father for years of relocating from one residential, frequently. Going with him from one hotel to another daily in his cab throughout Diane's early years was distinguished by trips throughout Manhattan in irregular schooling, an old taxi, and an unorthodox environment in which she was not raised, stability. Albeit it was submerged in little stages and artists' bohemian lives, she was compelled to mature throughout that period, swiftly, and turn into Diane was self-sufficient by the age of 15, announced that CED was freed from. She took a plane to Los Angeles to see her father for a week with her co-star Christopher Atkins and a friend from Child Bride, to put it briefly later on. Creek Diane would characterize it as a careless behavior by a female with excessive too young for freedom. After returning to New, she went to live with a friend's family in York, completed high school, and paid her own rent. School via a correspondence program. But in 1981, her mother unexpectedly reappeared and took her hostage. Returning to Georgia with Diane and her 6 weeks after her father filed a lawsuit, she was permitted to go back to New following the incident. York. Diane didn't talk to her mom for 3 years. Before eventually they made up during her Georgia time spent with her Pentecostal on occasion, grandmother Diane came to visit. The BAU town, where she was taught to stay away from the chaos and live simply, mentioned consuming salted pork butter. Repairing lawnmowers and leading a stress-free life, it helped her maintain her composure and rooted in the demanding realm of Hollywood. These are her experiences: unstable living due to parental divorce, circumstances involving her separation from her mother, to having to mature quickly, all helped mold Diane Lane into an self-reliant lady protected by the media and someone who consistently draws a distinct line between her roles in real life and plays. Diane Lane started working on her movie FM. Starring in a movie at the age of 13, a bit of romanticism. 79, in opposition to the renowned Lawrence. The movie wasn't merely a stepping stone. Olivier Stone, it was a blast that launched Diane Lane's ascent to national prominence overnight. She was more than just an adorable child, but a teenage actress body language, eyes and subtle feelings with an intensity of emotion almost beyond her. Less than a year later, she turned into the focus of interest when she was displayed on the front of Time magazine's issuance, dated August 13, 1979, under the Hollywood's Whiz Kids headline. She was called a fresh breeze by a magazine. In a time when movies don't instinct, a naturalism audiences didn't fall in love with this young woman since she is flawless. They were attracted to the uncommon. She brought purity and honesty to the Diane Lane didn't appear to be. Reciting a line, she made viewers feel as though she lived in every scene. Children and adults alike think that every Diane's emotion was genuine. At the age of 14, obtained what a lot of actors spend a lifetime of pursuing the audience's faith, as well as that outstanding start would become the explanation for why, in spite of all the amid highs and lows, she would always obtain the rarest currency in Hollywood. Soon after, Diane, patience and respect, kept showing up in a series of major movies like Six Pack and Touched by Love, then reached its zenith with well-known games like Rumblefish, The Streets of Fire for Outsiders. And the many of these were directed by Cotton Club. Francis Ford Coppola, who had faith in her with 3 roles in a row and on tremendous level of support for a Diane, was a teenage actress who was 18 years old. Lane was already worth $1 million because of high pay and a busy schedule for filming and an ever-present presence on the large screen, but the spotlight included as her career took off. Diane also encountered much more of the worst aspects of fame. While still a teenager, she was frequently romantically connected to co-stars Matt simply said, Dylan Michael, Pierre, Richard Gere due to their chemistry. Diane frequently had to publicly deny these stories or decide to keep quiet, preserve her private life, which she wishes to be shared. Simply because I portray a lover in a film does not imply that I truly adore them. Yet many individuals don't recognize that. Moreover, the majority of the roles that she was given during this period were variants of the ideal girlfriend that caused her to be frequently cast in provided chances to demonstrate deeper. The emotional spectrum of viewers started to get hazy. The distinction between actress, Diane, and the roles she performed compelled her to refrain from interacting with the media, and Diane is more choosy in her scripts. Lane jumped into Hollywood, immediately into the spotlight, and a remarkable but dangerous route, and she needed to pick things up fast, as well as early, that fame is not the equivalent to being comprehended, and that being a fantastic actress isn't enough. You must understand how to live in a world ready to compose your tale for you once years of being frequently seen in on-screen living in the blurred with a girlfriend, the distance between reality and character. A new stage in Diane Lane's life career, in which she didn't merely perform but requested to be heard as a complete artist who starred in Unfaithful in 2002. Diane Lane, who plays Connie, directed When a Wife Cheats, It's Not Out of Passion, but due to a strong feeling of isolation and alienation in an otherwise appearing flawless life, it was Diane's first time considering such a multi-layered and character who is emotionally torn moment in which Connie rests on a railroad following. There was no conversation or sex during her first affair. Hands shaking, eyes glazed, and shallow breaths became a landmark in film. It is still cited years later as ideal illustration of acting through silence. Few people are aware of the original draft did not include this sequence. In a conversation with the Jess Cagle program, Diane disclosed that we had completed the picture. They were returning the train to the station when Diane Lane instructed them to simply shoot. I didn't ask any questions. I closed my eyes and we began filming. Never did it again on late in a single take. She chuckled and spent the night with Conan O'Brien. Said that the train does not have a sex scene. However, everyone believes that there is emotional strength. And to consider how well she performed as Connie earned, she was nominated for an Academy Award she got the award for Best Actress, the Hollywood Films Year Awards. But more significantly, it changed her public persona is no longer. The young girlfriend's identity has changed by a real actress rather than any male co-starable to transport a full movie with only her eyes and silence following Diane Lane's infidelity continued to accelerate less than a year later. Back on the big screen, she brought a 2003 movie called Under the Tuscan Sun completely distinct tone, yet one that elevated her career to even higher levels. She portrayed Frances in the film, a middle-aged, newly divorced woman who'd parts from her previous life in the U.S. to purchase a dilapidated Tuscan villa and make a fresh start. The character wasn't naturally strong. Instead, someone was flung to the bottom and compelled to. Frances wasn't looking for a rebuild. Diane, the love she was looking for. Lane added realism to the part. Encountered during a discussion about Late, she admitted to having a night with Conan. O'Brien filming in Tuscany appeared to be a ideal getaway. However, after 5 weeks it got so overwhelming that she openly revealed, "I had consumed every drop of wine and olive. I missed my spaghetti after oil tried it all. I wanted to fly because I love my daughter so much. I sobbed because I didn't want to be at home." No longer in paradise, the role brought her a Best Actress Golden Globe nomination in a comedy or musical, but more crucially, the picture of Frances as a woman overcoming heartbreak with strength without. Posturing evolved into a new emblem for Hollywood middle-aged women without displaying frailty or exaggerating suffering. Rebirth was depicted by Diane Lane in a profoundly, "humans are slow and awkward," yet this is true with Diane had disappeared under. The Tuscan Sun, not only a performer who had outgrown her fame as a teenager but as an adult, establishing a connection with a whole generation of women looking for themselves after loss from infidelity, and under the Diane Lane of Tuscan Sun did not repeat she herself entered the field of silent, flawed women who are frequently disregarded over time but whose interior lives were on a walk brimming with silent defiance. She portrayed a wife in 1999's On the Moon, slipping away from her previous marriage, decided to when her spouse is abroad. On business and a Diane's summer vacation turns into a void. Character subtly betrays him not due to the enticing nature of the lover, but as she can no longer identify herself in a devoted wife's quiet life. The movie doesn't have any dramatic encounters with only a woman's eyes, who is aware of her mistakes yet is unable to. Diane was nominated for the position, for the Spirit Awards, which are autonomous, but, more significantly, it signaled a new stage. Behaving. Emotionally, rather than verbally, in 2010 Secretariat, Diane changed into a middle-aged housewife named Penny Chenery, who grudgingly takes over her father's horse farm in a world where men predominate of competitive horse racing in which men decide everything, and women are expected to be silent. Penny not only endures but makes Secretariat into among the top racehorses in this role, destroyed American history, age-based preconceptions, and functioned as Diane's silent statement. I no longer play the lover. Trumbo followed the leader. In 2015, Diane took a step back from the Cleo as shown in the middle of the screen, Fincher, the screenwriter, Dalton's wife. During the Hollywood blacklist, Trumbo era is not a role, meant to evoke strong emotions. Cleo was the type of woman who played strings, seldom captured on camera, silently carrying the weight of her spouse's decisions without protesting or escaping. Diane delivered that with a smothering determination. Grand. Speeches are not necessary. Simply she expressed the weight while standing there. Her portrayal of the role was beyond Diane, a strong woman in silence, also went back to romance and sleepovers. Reuniting with Richard in 2008 equipment after over 20 years of when they were younger, they lacked passion. Lovers, but two mature people who had been betrayed while attempting to trust each other, Gere and Diane pretended to have once genuinely loved one another. And because of that kind of chemistry, doesn't require evidence. Every look speaks for itself. And in the extended periods of stillness between 2 years of Souls, striving to mend, Diane Lane kept a composed and restrained persona in the eyes of the public, never one for the drama on the red carpet or disturbing remarks that she was widely regarded as an artist who lived for her craft and avoided controversy. However, in 2005, while speaking with Unexpectedly, Esquire magazine, Diane shattered the silence she had been holding with a revelation that left many had affairs with both Timothy and I was shocked. Christopher and Hutton Diane Atkins Lane Squire, 2005. She said, "No evasion, no blame." Clearly, as though dropping a long-carried weight that didn't just tremble upon admission, the public was compelled by the media to look back at years' worth of romantic rumors that had been circling her since the speculations from the 1980s were dismissed regarding Michael Peer Richard and Matt Dillon. The weight of the gear abruptly increased, although what really resonated with me about this confession, the names Timothy Hutton and weren't Christopher Atkins, was the in contrast. It showed a woman who so frequently shown people injured by betrayal had crossed the line in real life. Diane Lane was the line that Paradox turned, long seen as a representation of unadulterated honesty feeling, into a more powerful persona complexity. Roles that are good and bad, and victims and violators of reality fans were let down, But others thought her candor was evidence that Diane was actually living, not just performing. When the information wasn't complimentary from at an early age, Diane Lane was familiar with allowing the public to follow her personal life, yet among all the connections Christopher Lambert was discussed, was the person she spent the most time with, and the person who continued to provide a cozy smile on her face each time she said later. In 1984 they met in Paris. Diane was advertising a movie at the time, but both were at the prime of their professions. She's a rising star and he's a European. It didn't take long for a Hollywood star to cross-continental love story to start for. They were married in 1988, years later. They didn't have a noisy or tabloid marriage, motivated, and perhaps that's why it's regarded as one of the few tranquil sections of Diane Lane's frequently tumultuous. Eleanor was their only daughter. Born in 1993, Jasmine Lambert is Diane the Guiding. Light would subsequently be called in single choice she made in life, but like numerous partnerships in the entertainment, Diane and Lambert were unable to avoid the strain of long-distance travel-busy schedules and the conflict between distinct cultures. And in 1994 they got divorced. 6 years into the marriage, with no scandal resentment following the divorce, for both went on their individual trajectories and discovered something new, relationships. Diane Lane was married, Josh Brolin as an actor. In 2004, while actress Jay was married to Christopher Lambert Mysar, however, that marriage only lasted until 1999, the years 2007 to he dated Sophie, an actress, in 2014. It's important to note, Marceau, that even, despite their inability to stay husband and Diane, Lambert's wife, never disparaged him. Rather, she frequently stressed that we actually loved one another, but occasionally love is insufficient on its own. What is admirable is that in spite of the breakup, they kept a true camaraderie while co-parenting their daughter likes real teammates. But not all. When a relationship ends, there is loss. Some unions, such as Diane and Lambert's, finish with progress and acceptance rather than bitterness, and that's how Diane Lane decides to live in peace with accountability and refraining from assigning blame. Following her separation from Christopher, it took Lambert Diane Lane over 10 years to let her heart open once more, and when she selected Josh, who is equally complex. Brolin, a performer renowned for his rough appearances and a private life characterized by turbulent relationship, they became engaged in July 2003. On August 15, 2004, they were married they appeared to be the perfect pair on the outside. Both had experienced heartbreak, matured, both breathing as though it were oxygen, but a little more than 4 months later, the wedding. The partnership took a knock. The first dark chapter began on December 20th, 2004. Following an incident, Diane Lane phoned the police, heated dispute with Brolin at their Josh. Brolin was taken into custody at home on a domestic battery as a misdemeanor accusation that swiftly sparked media attention. Frantic. But Diane refused to press accusations, and their representative afterwards characterized the event as a misunderstanding. No court proceedings ensued, no public responsibility was assigned, but the couple's picture was no longer. The same Lane didn't say anything to she didn't defend or accuse the press. Herself via the media she remained. Diane Lane remained silent after that. Seems to withdraw more inside, avoiding public gatherings and committing additional time to devote to motherhood. And her peaceful anchor household, the union lasted almost 10 years, but in the end, Diane was the one. Brolin and she were the ones who decided to go. Filed for divorce in February 2013, and the final decision was made in November on the 27th of that year. Neither of them talked poorly. Other in public, there weren't any court cases. And no post-divorce media campaigns. Everything took place in silence. Diane has always experienced agony, quiet but determined, following the divorce. Diane Lane and Josh Brolin went about their lives as usual, and professions. Brolin continued to look for more success in the entertainment industry, he added, had abstained since 2013 after several alcohol-related ratings events that might occur if her previous marriage ended in respect for one another, and Grace, her second child, the subtle indications of stress and distress. Diane Lane never asserted that she was a victim, but she made the decision to back off, keep quiet, and leave, was the most explicit thing she could say. Talk about silence and self-respect. Strength. In screen, Diane Lane frequently depicts strong, resilient women who wrestle with feeling and who possess deep depth from Connie's suffering and disloyal to Frances, who was reborn in under Martha Kent or the Tuscan Sun. The silent sacrifice is pinnacle, however, after the yuts. The cameras pause and she doesn't bring those feelings actually brought Diane Lane home. On a talk program, life is a different tale. When questioned about her ability to cook, she laughed out loud. I'm only skilled at portraying a cook in motion pictures. I have actually purchased take in real life, out and acted as though I had made it myself. Of those adorable little Diane lies without attempting to be flawless, readily acknowledges her shortcomings. And that's precisely why she seems so relatable, an actress who was previously nominated for an Oscar symbol of allure on a magazine cover, but also an individual who has struggled with a toaster and Unable to distinguish between a duck and a chicken. Egg. In an interview with Playboy in 1995, she also showed a quite odd and surprising one of my personal interests is I have an entire pair of thigh-high boots, assortment of high shoes that I adore the sensation of being raised a couple of inches, sensual, humorous and innate. That's when Diane Lane isn't being herself. She enjoys collecting vintage furniture, enjoys taking walks, doing yoga, and riding a bike. Horses and devotes the same amount of time to conceivable with her daughter, Eleanor, yet fanfare. Doesn't chase trends. She thrives on them. Her own words, straightforward yet never commonplace, which may be why viewers always feel like there's something so real about whether on or off screen. Diane Lane doesn't create a persona. She just lives as herself, occasionally a touch strange. A little strange at times, but never phony, unlike a lot of Hollywood celebrities who resort to Diane Lane, the media to bare their souls, choose to go a different route than she, retaliate when misinterpreted. Doesn't so be in public after heartbreak. She remains quiet as though events in her life must only be comprehended by her alone. According to some, silence is a sign of weakness, but to Diane, silence is strong. Not because nothing can be said other than the fact that, after two, there's no need to say it. A contentious arrest for failed marriages, as well as a lifetime of romantic rumors, that she continues to keep a private space, one that is inaccessible to the press and where she is unaffected by fame. Some stars' feelings make the world. Diane Lane. Recall them via loudness. Decided to keep quiet and leave her mark. No controversies, no huge box office campaigns, without a heavy media presence. A woman simply moves in front of the camera turns and whispers into her eyes. VH1 ranked her in 2005 for turning anguish into art. On their ranking of the 100 best children's stars, acknowledge an indisputable Diane Lane's astounding revelation of truth heights from the start, that she was ranked 7th on the same year's the list of the most gorgeous celebrities, more than 40. Not because she sought beauty norms, but since Diane has gotten older experience of embedded resilience and an audiences like her for her unique aura, because Diane Lane's refusal to perform the twice in the same role from Connie and disloyal to Frances. Under the Martha Kent in Washington, D.C., or a Tuscan Sun, every woman has her own universe. Tale full with wounds, inconsistencies, and Diane doesn't paint her characters with brightness. Layer by layer, she peels them back, dread by fear, and presents the viewer with unfiltered, few people have relatable reflections of themselves. Actresses continue to have successful careers. Diane Lane is different after the age of 40, has not only endured but also changed, does not compete for attention, does not reposition herself as a symbol of feminism, does not possess grand declarations, silence not asserted in the name of she does anything that isn't tied to any trends. Few people are aware of Diane's most strong voice. Lane also makes time for volunteer work in the community. She collaborates with Hire in secret, international assistance for world poverty relief initiatives without loud statements, just calm public donation drives, silently committed action, but never uncaring, invisible. Yet never Diane Lane's legacy isn't active, measured in statues of gold, but in the audience's faith in her at all times. We are hurt whenever she shows up and starts crying. We can comprehend her silence when we miss her when she leaves. And that's a few things in the entertainment industry can retain more than 4 decades of unwavering integrity throughout her work, considering the manner in which she no longer lives, at the focus of romances in tabloids, or Diane Lane now plays heavyweight. Parts in movies, selects a more leisurely, quieter, and more self-directed lifestyle, similar to how she'd endured all of the storms in the last 4. She continues to act for decades, but not to keep her fame. It's just a natural part of her. Diane left lifeblood on the tiny screen, a powerful impression as a perceptive politician on the 2018 House of Cards, and more recently as New York's Slim Keith feud series' high society symbol. The Swans against the Kapot, she received an Emmy for the part in 2024, nomination confirming that at almost 60, Diane Lane isn't merely getting by in Hollywood, she's changing the definition to possess layers of maturity and fearlessness. No parties, no extravagant mansions, no actress. Diane chooses a noisy social networking platform, living a simple life and doing yoga on weekends. Go horseback riding every morning, walks and gathers whenever she can. Antique furniture likes flowers. Setting up reading and gardening, and Diane stated in the interview that keeping her daily health of the body and mind is important. More to her than ever before the spotlight. Most importantly, she spends as much time as feasible for her daughter. Jasmine Eleanor, 1993, saw the birth of Lambert from her first. Eleanor's marriage to Christopher Lambertus, currently a freelance writer and model, didn't pursue performing as her mother did, but retains the essence of an individual performer who has made appearances in numerous Vanity Fairs and fronted more Diane. Once worked on fashion ads in New York, revealed that Eleanor is a perfect match for them. My motivation for not losing myself in a world 60. Diane Lane is noisy and lax. She previously expressed a wish to hold on to her youth. Every wrinkle is a privilege of aging. Memory in a field that is fixated on. That comment about youth and smoothness seems to be a manifesto without cosmetics. Diane Lane. Surgery without pursuing objectives, accepts aging as a necessary aspect of life. Lovely, multi-layered, and rich in Diane Lane. Doesn't have to have experience, declare oneself a legend for the simple reason that by observing how she has overcome from the 13-year-old girl, 40 years, on Time magazine's cover to the a woman in her 60s reclining serenely on an, you comprehend some of the Emmy-nominated set. Noise is not necessary for abilities to be recalled that she is still stunning. Not due to surgery or ideal lighting, but because she's bold enough to wear, or treat each life scar as if it were a badge of honor in a glamorous Hollywood. Diane Lane is brutally selective and living evidence that the beauty of nature and a resilient spirit is always in trend. What do you believe Diane Lane to be? An underappreciated actress's powerhouse, or merely a star who burnt as a teenager? Which of her roles remained, bright and faded? What made the most impression on you? Does it have to do with her as a person who touches your heart? Are you brave enough to allow yourself to age like she has and leave a comment below and inform us of any developments? Remember to remember. To like and to ensure you don't miss our next inspiring picture, we have more tales to share regarding celebrities who don't simply shine, but illuminate the path for others. To preserve the video, tap it on the screen, investigating these amazing journeys.